Okay, let's go ahead, Sarah.
So this is the action attribute. I check the health check. Maybe you can share the one here in the definition file. So as we agreed that we will remove the steps from the action attributes as long as it is represented on the canvas. And for the inputs and the outputs, this is the one I implement. So for each input and output, the user will select the attributes from this menu. I'll implement the select the drop down menu later, but it will represent all the attributes that are included here, and with add button, so user can add multiple attributes at the same time.
So this list of attributes, where is it from? Is it based on the component attributes?
Sorry?
That search, where are you doing the search
attributes. Again? We are here. We are discussing the action attributes, not the function attributes.
Right. So for the action attributes, because the workflow attributes, are you tying them to the component? Or how are you getting, where do you do the search from?
Yeah, these are the things that I wanted to make sure that I need to know where to get it from.
Okay.
Okay. Will you tell me where to get it, or?
Okay, so the way we will do it, because right now the way I like to do it, if you go back to the screen, what I want to do is make sure that we always have the dynamic properties, right? So like health check properties.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that's going to be automatically, you can say templated, right? Now, where do we get the attributes for workflow, for action attributes? I think for now, I like to just use the JSON itself to define it, because the attributes for input there's two ways that we can get it from. We either get it from the components this workflow action is tied to. So based on the components, we can say here are the available attributes that can be defined, or it can be retrieved from the template, the mapping store. If it's resource resolution, then you can retrieve it from the mapping store.
I'm sorry, the first option, do you think that we can get it from the functions that we are adding to this section?
Exactly.
So first I have to add the function to the action.
Yes. And then there will be additional actions kind of available, attributes available.
Okay, so whether to get it from the functions included in this action, or to select it from the mapping file?
So the mapping file is another source you can get this for, but that's only if you, within your workflow action, if you're using resource resolution.
So I have to give the user the two options.
Okay, but I think for now what I want to just use is the JSON form. You know how you see the JSON form of this, right?
What JSON file?
The JSON for the action attributes, there is a JSON editor that you can click on, right?
This one here?
Yes.
Do you mean to type it directly in the JSON file?
Right. So that's the I think that's the way we'll go for now.
This is a manual entry.
It's a manual entry. I understand. Yes.
Okay, but of course it will connect to something else, even if I type it manually.
Right. It should connect to this specific workflow action of health check. So what they should be defining is basically the input and the output when they click on that source attribute.
Yeah, but again, this attribute has some properties. Where where we call the properties from?
So I want to say it could be a custom property, right? If it's a custom property, then you want them to add it in as part of the JSON definition of that workflow action. Or it could be part of the component. If it's part of the component, we can derive it from the component. Or it could be, if it's resource resolution, it could be from basically from the mapping file itself.
But I see that the inputs of the action and the outputs may come after after including the function to this action. I see it may be not the first step. I thought that the action attributes may be set before I drag and drop the function. But here
not necessarily. No. Like the health check properties, yes, right? The dynamic one, we always want to set it, okay? But everything else can come afterwards, after you drag the component function and all that other stuff.
So the user may use the old way of adding a custom attribute inside the JSON file.
Yes.
Or use the attributes from the function that, but how to tell what function I can bring the attributes from, or should I list all the attributes of all functions in this action?
Because when we do the steps, you'll know which components that are tied to this specific workflow action, right?
Yeah, so if I have 3 functions in this action, I have to represent all the attributes from this function.
Yes, you can present the attributes of those different functions. I don't know if we want to do something like where you have a hierarchy, select your component, select the attributes of that component that you can make as input within the action attributes. We can do it that way as well. Or we can summarize and just present all the unique attributes of all the those components and let the user choose from that.
Okay, so let's get back to the manual option. I think I can give the user an interface in this form without going back to the JSON file. For the custom attributes, I think we need to define the type and the description. These are the elements or the properties of this attribute. Is there any other thing to define the attribute?
No, those are the main ones.
Okay, so I think I can add here maybe an add button for custom input for custom attributes, and by hitting this button, it will show an input for the attribute name, the description, and the type.
Okay.
Without getting back to the editor, and I think we are here. We are replacing the coding way with the GUI entry.
Right. I think if I look at the other, GUIs that are Tosca based, they basically have that type of format where where you can click on add and then add your custom.
Yeah, just like the custom keys we have in the metadata.
Right. It's similar to that. Yep.
Yeah. So I think I think that for the thing to type in the JSON editor, it just I'm confusing the user whether to use the JSON directly or to use interface. But of course, he will have the option to write it directly in JSON file. But here I'm helping him to use interface directly.
Right. So the one thing I want to say, Sarah, if it's like a simple, definition, then they will definitely use this form, right? If it's something that's more complex, they may just want to go to the editor and put a complex definition there. Yeah.
What are the other types of complexity?
Well, when I say complex, it could be a complex, nested JSON structure, right? That has maybe two nested layers of JSON.
Yeah, I mean, for that they can go directly to the editor if it's
right, exactly.
definition, yeah.
I think for most of our use cases, it should be just simple, name of the attribute, what is the data type, integer, Boolean, string, or JSON, and then you can
even
say
it's a list.
description, and that's it. Is it required or not required? So it's similar to what we have even in the mapping section, right?
Okay. Yeah, like this one, we have the description and required or not, and the type.
Right.
So,
I thought that you are selecting the data type, but I see this one.
Yeah, that's the complex one. That's based on the mapping file itself.
Okay. I'll figure out this point. I think it will be good if we include it in the interface beside the JSON file actually.
You want to include the what inside the JSON file?
To add a custom attribute from the interface, like the custom keys.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go with that approach. I think for most cases, it should be just a custom data type. And then it could be from the function attributes. But for now, I think it's better if we just, even if it's from function attributes, let's treat it as a custom type. And later on, we can, make a decision of how to derive it from function attributes.
Are the designer user know all this scenario?
Can you say that again?
I'm asking about if the designer user know how to deal with all of these dependencies. Because if I see here, as I'm telling you that the container, which is the action, have dependency on the elements inside of it. I'm asking if the user, I see here that I have to define all the attributes property for the main container, then to go inside the child elements inside it. But I see here that the container depends on the contents.
The container depends on.
I mean the container is the action, which is the main frame we have, and its attributes depending on the elements inside it, which is the functions.
Right.
So I'm asking if the designer user have this knowledge of how things work together.
So I want to say, today everything is done manually, so they do have this knowledge, right? The question is, will they have, they will pivot, right, to using the UI to basically do what they're doing today manually, right? So the question is more about the user experience of how we can simplify that entire process of creating the action and defining that main JSON file itself.
But I think if we have new user who didn't deal with the old way of creating the JSON, of dealing with the JSON file, I think he may get confused in this step. Maybe I'm speaking of.
No. If you have a brand new user, right? Would he know all the steps he needs to take? And I think right now he may not, right? So this is something I think we can improve as the project evolves, right? And we just want to get at least a draft in of how it can work initially, right? And as we as more and more users come in, the requirements of how to make this more simplified will be provided so that we can evolve the product itself.
So let's go back to the attributes for this input. So these are the inputs, the input attributes the user select from this list. Do I have to mention the attribute time here? I just mentioned what if it's required or not by this star. The one with the yellow color is for the required, and this is not required.
Mm-hmm.
The gray one. Do I have to mention the attribute type?
I don't think so. For now, let's not include it.
Okay, and this delete button can delete the selection. Of course, the user can go back and add more attributes from the list. And that's again matching the output, matching the inputs. But I have here the attribute that is getting some attributes for the value. This is the one for the output. Here the value is getting some attributes.
Right.
Okay, so these are the attributes. And of course, it's again, the user can select it from a list. Uniworky, we got this value.
Again, this is from the function components that could be returned to us. Like once the function is completed or executed, it can return us an output. And I want to say that not all workflow actions will have an output necessarily.
Yeah.
Some of them will have it, some of them won't. So the output is an optional.
Yeah, I saw some actions that doesn't have any output. So I think I'll apply the same scenario for the function attributes. The only thing that I have to split
the function attributes is a little bit easier because you'll have a definition, and in that definition, all the attributes are defined. The data types are defined, so the user can select from that definition itself.
Yeah, I mean that in the same interface. Maybe let's go and get one of these. Maybe for the resource assignment here, this function. I will present the interfaces section, and this section will have inputs, and I see here, and of course, I have a scenario that to place two tabs, one for the inputs and one other for the outputs inside the interface section. This one. This is the section. I will place a tab here with input and output, and for the input, the user again will select the attributes, and we will list them the same way we have here.
So one question I had, Sarah, like today when we enter these attributes, so instead of entering the custom attributes for input separately and output separately, should we do something that where the user clicks on, I want to enter custom attributes, and the form will give them an option to enter both for input and output?
So I have to select the attributes and define whether to go for the input or the output?
Something like, 1 second, let's see if I can.
Do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, I want to quickly share. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to say is that when the user wants to add a custom attributes, he'll get a form, and in this form itself,
you are talking about the custom attributes. This is not for the one you select from the menu.
The one you select from the menu.
I mean, this is one. We are selecting the attributes from a list, but you are now defining the custom attributes.
These are the custom ones, yes.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to say is that should we just give them a form where the user can enter, you'll have, let's say, attribute name, right? But basically a form where both you have an input section and an output section, so this way he doesn't need to manage it differently. He can,
Okay,
you'll have
so yeah.
type, and then you'll have what was the other thing? Description, right? Description, and then we had required, right?
Anytime, maybe. You can go this. The name, the description, and define the required.
Yeah. So basically, here you're defining one thing, then you can allow them to enter another thing, right? And then finally, if they want, they can enter something for output.
Yeah, that's what. That's what I was about to implement. I'll separate the custom attributes for each input and output different.
Right. So I was thinking, instead of let them manage it, the custom attributes, they can manage it in one form instead of having one form for output and one form for input. They can just have an input output form and enter all their information and then submit it.
No, sorry, Yuri, the scenario you just drew, do you want to just without using two forms for input and output, we just use one for both of them at one time?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And the reason I say that is that this way they can define everything in one shot, and then they can submit it, and they'll see the UI will render the changes for both input and output based on what they done here.
So this is a common layout for all custom attributes, right?
Right.
Now, whether they are function attributes or action attributes.
Well, function attributes, we can derive it from the function because the function attribute has a definition. So you can, we know what function attributes we can select from. But custom attributes for workflow actions, I was thinking just have one form where the user can enter all the custom attributes for input and output, and save it.
Okay.
Itself.
I think we may want to include some of this in the user stories, right? I mean,
we will. This is just brainstorming so that when Sarah comes up with the, with a prototype, then we can create the story.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can have one form inside the attribute, and after the attribute name and type, or maybe before them, I can define whether it's for a custom attribute for the input or for the output, without having two forms.
Okay. So just an idea, Sarah, and then we can discuss the, if it's a good idea or a bad idea. Again, the most important thing is user experience. So if you find a way that makes this even more presentable and easier to use, we're all in for that approach as well.
Yeah, I think I can have it inside. Let's assume this is the interfaces, or maybe you can go for the function list. Yeah. So this is the interfaces section. I think I can add a button here to add a custom attribute, which will open a model that have the form you provided in your screen. I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So we are talking about the interfaces maybe, and or maybe the input and output. I think we have one here different and another. Maybe. Okay, I got what you were mentioning here.
Yeah, even if you add something like interface and click on that interface where the user defines both input and output, that'll be fine. And then he can delete it. And then you can remove that search box for now because we won't use it.
But we have to maybe we don't show the drop down menu here where the user search and select when we don't have any functions or inside the action. So he will have only one option to add a custom.
Yes, that's right.
And once we have a function, so we will show this option.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
And of course, I think the user will have the option to whether even if he have some function inside the action, he can add also the custom attributes, even if he have some functions. Or that replaces the other option.
Can you say that one more time?
I mean, even if the user have some functions inside the action, I think he will be able to add a custom attribute.
Yes, but a custom attribute is mainly for the workflow action. If it's a component function, then we choose the attributes based on what we have.
But he cannot add a custom attributes in that case?
No, not in the component section.
Okay, but
component section is the attributes you have defined in the in the component definition.
I'm sorry, Yuri. Do we have two scenarios that are different between the action and the function for the inputs?
Right. So if it's a component function, then all the attributes are defined inside the component definition itself.
So we will show the add custom option.
You don't need to show add custom for component function. No.
Okay. But for the action, the user can select can add a custom action, a custom attribute, or maybe to select from the function inside.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so exactly. The two options are only for the action.
That's right.
Okay, I got this one. So again, are we okay with showing the attributes the same this way, or there is any other element that we need to provide?
I like this approach, but when we will have our demos, okay, this is one of the feedback we want to kind of select. The only thing I want to say, usually we don't use yellow to represent required. Usually we use red to represent required. So, any reason you went with yellow?
No problem. Yuri, are you here? Hello?
Yeah, that's better. Can you do the status also?
Yeah.
But this is the type of feedback you'll get when we do the, the, what do you call it? The user experience.
Yes.
Discussions.
Okay, I'll update the function attributes with the same approach, and I'll update you with once I update the user version, and I think we can then have feedback. Okay. And I think Simon will be
And Sarah, do you? I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay.